Okay, can you hear me now? All right. We'll just let the break room crew go. They'll come on when they want to. Yeah, how's everybody doing tonight? Good? All right. We're going to pick up tonight with Gideon, and I have lost my spot, but I think I know where I was at. If you would turn to Judges chapter 6, we'll kind of catch ourselves up and then we will move on. Judges chapter 6. Everybody preparing for the cold for this weekend? It's going to be good and cool about Saturday. And so, Judges chapter 6, we're talking about the judges. And the reason we have judges, if you remember, is because the nation of Israel has decided that they are going to kind of thumb their nose at God. They go into the promised land, and they don't do what God tells them. They about halfway do what God tells them. And because they don't do what God tells them, it creates a problem. Now, how many of you can identify with that in your life? If you don't do what you're supposed to do, bad things generally happen. And so the judges weren't chosen because they were good moral people. They were chosen to just simply deliver Israel from a mess. And every time the judge died, whether it's 23 years or 8 years or whatever, the people went back to doing the very things they were doing before. Being disobedient, being unfaithful. And part of the problem with these judges is the fact that the nation of Israel, because they did not do what they were supposed to do, allowed the people that God said, these are the people, you're going to take their land, you're going to take their space because this is what I've promised you, and they allowed them to exist. And they allowed them to occupy their space. And not only did they allow them to continue in their space, but then they started to intermingle with them. And because they intermingled with them, they started to take their false gods into their homes. They started to worship the false gods of the people around them. And so over time, what happens is they start to look a whole lot more like the people around them and a whole lot less like the very chosen group of people that God chose. Are y'all following along so far? When you compromise with the world, it's almost always going to lead you to disobedience with God. Is it any different today? When you compromise, you almost certainly are going to wind up being unfaithful to God. It will lead you into disobedience. And so that's what's happened over time with Israel, is these judges now have been given. And these judges aren't all good, but they have a purpose, and that purpose is to simply deliver Israel for the moment from their backwards ways, for their unfaithfulness. And so that's kind of where we are. Now the bridge is from God to judges, and eventually Israel's going to demand, because they have accumulated so many ways of the people around them, they're going to say, we want to be like the people around them. We want to be like the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hittites. We want to be like the people around us. And because they have a king, guess what we want? We want a king. And so when we get through with the judges, we're going to go and we're going to look at the kings. Did God ever intend for the nation of Israel to have a king other than him? No way. But that's where they're going. So to understand it, judges, the time of the judges, simply sits between them basically casting God to the side. Now, just because they cast God to the side and became unfaithful, is God ever going to be unfaithful to the nation of Israel? No. Because when God makes a promise, there is no greater promise that he can make. And when he makes a promise, what does he always intend to do? He keeps it. And so Israel is totally in an unfaithful situation. Now, if you go read the Old Testament book Hosea, guess what you're going to find? This is the same dynamic to that story. The prophet is told to go marry a prostitute, an unfaithful wife, because that's what Israel has become. Make sense? And so the time of the judges is not a good time. Now, last week we started on Gideon. And there's two stories we're going to cover. We're just going to briefly mention the others. But There's two that have really fleshed out. And the first one is Gideon. And Gideon was that very reluctant warrior. Y'all remember what Gideon said when God said, I want you to go deliver Israel? You mighty man of valor. What did Gideon say? What you talking about, Willis? I am not only from the smallest tribe, I'm the weakest one in the tribe. He was hoping that God would say, you know what, you're right. I think I need to go on. But you see, God looks at man a different way than we do. God doesn't look at the stature of the man. He looks at the heart. And so Gideon, not to be completely obedient to start with, said, okay, God, if you really want me to do this thing, then let me just throw out what's that word? A fleece. So in Judges chapter 6, we see that he is still trying to negotiate with God. Have you ever negotiated with God? Have you ever prayed in a direction to get an answer from God that you already knew God wasn't going to give you that answer? I shared with y'all last week, my whole pathway into ministry was built on me throwing out fleeces and God going, well, here you go. And every time I'm like, let me do another one. And so let's pick up in chapter 6, verse 36. Then Gideon said to God, if you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said, behold, I am laying a fleece of wool on the threshing floor. If there is dew on the fleece alone, and it is dry on all the ground, then I know that you will save Israel by whose hand? By my hand, as you have said. And it was so, verse 38, when he rose early in the next morning and squeezed the fleece, he wrung enough dew from the fleece to fill a bowl with water. That should have just, Clarence, that would have convinced you, right? I mean, you'd have said, thank you, Lord, I'm ready to go. Well, verse 39, then Gideon said to God, let not your anger burn against me. Let me speak just once more. Please let me test once more with the fleece. Is Gideon doing his best to get out of this? Absolutely. Let it be dry on the fleece only, and all the ground there be dew. So just reverse. And so verse 40, God did so that night, and it was dry on the fleece only, and all the ground there was dew. So is Gideon, at some point you just have to go, I think I'm convinced, God. I mean, have you ever been to that place in your life where you just had to just submit? I mean, it's not easy to submit. I love to give God good advice about my life. Don't y'all? Pam, I know you do. I love to go, God, if you'll just listen to my plan, it is so much better than your plans. I have discovered in ministry, God's plan ain't always the easiest plan, but it will always be the best plan. Amen? So let's look at chapter 7. Then Zerubbabel, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and encamped beside the spring of Harod. And the camp of Midian was north of them, and the hill of Morah in the valley. Verse 2, and the Lord said to Gideon, I love this story. The people with you are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel boast over me, saying, my own hand has saved me. So now let's think about this. This whole time he's telling Gideon, you will go save Israel by your mighty hand of valor. Gideon, the reluctant warrior, has no choice now but to go. And then when he gets there, God goes, now David, I love this part. All these people you got with you, that's too many. How many of y'all would like to be standing there when God said, look at the enemy lights over here. There's thousands of them, and you got too many people with you. And here's the reason why. Because if I let you go in here with all these people, they're going to think you did it and not me. Poor Gideon. The people are too many. Verse 3, now therefore proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home and hurry away from Mount Gilead. This is Jim, this is my friend group. This is the Friday night friend group. There's trouble a-brewing. And if you just ask, if you're afraid, leave now. And that's what happened. Whoever's fearful. And look what happened. 22,000 of them left. I'm feeling sorry for Gideon. And not only that, but only 10,000 remained. Now, I'm not good at math, but I'm thinking this is going the wrong way. And I've been in some of those situations where it was not looking so good. But 10,000 is still a good number, right? Oh, look at verse 4. And then the Lord said to Gideon, the people are still what? It's too many. Take them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. And I'm sure Gideon's going, I wasn't going to test them at all. Okay? I'm good with the 10,000. This one shall go with you, and anyone of whom I say to you, this one shall not go with you, and he shall not go. So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, everyone who laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps, you shall set him by himself. Likewise, everyone who kneels down to drink, and the number of those who lapped, putting their hands to their mouth, was the 300 men. But all the rest of the people who knelt down to drink water, and the Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 men who lapped, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands, and let all the others go, every man to his own home. So now we've gone from 22,000 leaving, 10,000 remaining. Now remember where Gideon's at in his mind. I'm from the smallest tribe, and I'm the least among all my tribesmen. And I've tested you, God, because you said I was a mighty man of valor, that you would deliver Israel by my hand. But you go back to the fleece thing. How many times did he challenge God? The fleece. And so now what is God doing to him? He's just breaking it on down where he can get it. He's putting it down there where he can get it. And so now he's gone from 10,000 down to how many? 300. Now that's, I'm not a mathematician, but we're going the wrong way, Anna. And what is God doing here? You see, to build character, to build confidence, to build that person that Gideon needs to be, what is he doing? He's stripping away some of those things. It's easy to have security in this world when you have a lot of stuff. Amen? You think that the money you have is your security. You think that the homes and the stuff. But what happens when those things start to leave you? That's when you find out who the real person is that you are. The person that's really standing in your shoes. Are you going to be faithful when times get tough? But more importantly, this is about God's glory. This is about His glory. It's not about Gideon's glory. It's not about the nation of Israel. The nation of Israel is unfaithful. They are absolutely horrible. If I was God, I would have destroyed every one of them and started over with somebody else. You could hardly do worse. But when God makes a promise, He keeps it. Verse 9, the same night the Lord said to him, arise, go down against the camp, for I have given it into your hand. But if you are afraid to go down to the camp with Purah, your servant, and you shall hear what they say, and afterwards your hands shall be strengthened go down against the camp. Then he went down with Purah, his servant, to the outpost of the armed men who were in the camp. And the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the people of the east lay along the valley like locusts in abundance. And their camps were without number, as the sand is on the seashore in abundance. In other words, there was a lot of people. In the Bible, you're going to see references, the stars, the number of stars in the sky and the sand. That means a lot. It's just a lot. You can't really quantify it. There's just too many to put a number to it. It just is a lot. Verse 13, and when Gideon came, behold, a man was telling a dream to his comrade. And he said, behold, I dreamed a dream, and behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the camp, and the Midian, and it came to the tent and struck it. That is, it fell and turned it upside down, so that the tent lay flat. And his comrade answered, this is no other than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, the man of Israel. God has given into his hand Midian and all the camp. So is God intervening in this thing? Is God setting the stage for this thing? Sometimes we look around and we go, Lord, what are you doing? But he's already doing it. He's already doing it. Verse 15, and as soon as Gideon heard the telling of the dream and his interpretation, he worshiped. That's a good move. That's a good move. I'm so glad God gives us a little glimpse of things to come. Aren't you glad that God gives us a little bit of attaboys as we go sometimes? A little confidence builder. Some of those things that keep you moving forward. He worshiped. And he returned to the camp of Israel and said, arise, for the Lord has given us the host of Midian into your hand. He's a different man now. Why? Because he sees what God is doing. Not what he's doing. Because you can imagine, to start with, he just stood there and watched 22,000 of those people that said, I will never leave you nor I will forsake you. They left. And then when it all came down to the other group, out of the 10,000 that remained, God said, don't need them. You just need the 300. And it's looking pretty dismal until Gideon gets to see what God's doing. And I love this story because I've been at a place in my life, and some of you may have too, where once I saw what God was doing, it strengthened me. It took away the anxiety in me. Verse 16, and he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put trumpets in their hands, of all of them, and empty jars with torches inside the jars. And he said to them, look at me and do likewise. When I come to the outskirts of the camp, do as I do. And when I blow the trumpet, I and all who are with me, then blow the trumpets also on every side of the camp, and shout for the Lord, and for Gideon. So Gideon and the 100 men who were in it with him came to the outskirts of the camp. And at the beginning of the middle watch, when they had set the watch, they blew the trumpets and smashed the jars in their hands. Then the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the jars. They held in their hands the torches, and their right hands the trumpets blew. And they cried out, a sword for the Lord and Gideon. And every man stood in his place around the camp, and all the army ran. They cried out and fled. And when they blew the 300 trumpets, the Lord set every man's sword against his comrade and against the enemy, against all the army. And the army fled as far as Beth Shmittah towards Zerah, as far as the border of Abel-Mahlon, by Tabbath, and the men of Israel were called out from Naphtali and Asher and from all Manasseh, and they pursued after Midian. So what Gideon is now doing is deceiving the enemy. They think there's about a whole lot more than there is than just the 300. And so what do they see? They see a huge, massive army coming at them. And so what do? They run. I love the story of Elisha. Remember when the servant went out and said the enemy is all around us. All you can see is trouble everywhere. And the prophet said, Lord, open his eyes. And what did he see? Angels, chariots of fire everywhere. And here's the answer. There's more of us than there are them. And you see, the lesson of Gideon is this. When you have God, you don't need all the rest of this stuff. And I love this story because militarily speaking, it was a deception plan. Gideon organized this thing in such a way that he made his army look massive. And in reality, there was only how many? 300. And so everything is working out just like God said. And verse 24, Gideon sent messengers throughout all the hill country of Ephraim, saying, come down against the Midianites and capture the waters against them as far as Beth-barah, and also the Jordan. So all the men of Ephraim were called out, and they captured the waters as far as Beth-barah, and also the Jordan. And they captured the two princes of Midian, Oreb and Zeb. They killed Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeb they killed at the winepress of Zeb. Then they pursued Midian, and they brought heads of Oreb of Zeb to Gideon across the Jordan. So they have now won the field. They've won the battle. But look how we started off. We started off with a man who had no plan to be anything that God wanted him to be, who started out fearful and afraid, the smallest tribe, the smallest member of the tribe, and God had to build him. He had to use adversity to build that character, to build that man that would stand against the enemy. And that's what God often does, is he uses that adversity, those challenges, to make us better. I mean, have you ever had challenges in your life that made you stronger? What's the old saying? What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that's truly the lesson. But it's also a lesson for Gideon, because Gideon has learned that God is bigger than all the armies around him. Chapter 8. Then the men of Ephraim said to him, what is it that you have done to us, not to call us when you went out to fight against Midian? And they accused him fiercely. And he said to them, what have I done now in comparison with you? Is not the gleaning of the grapes at Ephraim better than the grapes harvest at Abzer? God has given into your hands the prince of Midian, Oreb and Zeb, and what have I been able to do in comparison with you? Then their anger against him subsided when he said this. And Gideon came to the Jordan, crossed over, he ate, and the 300 men who were with him, exhausted yet pursuing. So he said to the men of Succoth, please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me. They are exhausted, and I am pursuing after Zebeth and Zebulun, the kings of Midian, and the officials of Succoth. Said, are the hands of Zebeth and Zalmunna, I'm terrible with these guys, already in the hands, and you shall give bread to your army? So Gideon said, well then, when the Lord has given Zebeth and Zalmunna into my hands, I will flail your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with the briars. So now he's having to deal with the people around him even after the battle. One of the things that Gideon is experiencing here is the fact that the battle really never ends. It's a continuation of a battle. It's just a different phase of a battle. And from there, verse 8, he went on to Peniel and spoke to them in the same way. And the men of Peniel answered him as the men of Succoth. And he said to the men of Peniel, when I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebeth and Zalmunna were with Karkar in the army about 15,000 men who had left all the army, the people of the east, for there had fallen 12,000 men who drew the sword. And Gideon went by the way of the tent dwellers, east of Nobah, and Well, that's a good one. Just take a guess at that one. And attacked the army, and the army felt secure. And Zebulun and Zilmah fled, and he pursued them and captured the 2 kings of Midian, and he threw all the army into a panic. Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from the battle by the ascent of Airs, and captured a young man of Succoth and questioned him, and he wrote down for him all the officials and the elders of Succoth, 77 men. And he came to the men of Succoth and said, Behold, Zebah and Zilmah, about whom you taunted me, saying, Are the hands of Zebah and Zilmah already in your hands, that we should give bread to your men who are exhausted? And he took the elders of the city, and he took thorns of the wilderness and the briars with them, and taught the men of Succoth a lesson. And he broke down the tower of Peniel and killed the men of the city. So what is he doing? He's now starting to punish the people around him for their part and not supporting the efforts of God. And so you see God's hand in all this. You see that disobedience, that failure of Israel to do what they're supposed to do once they come into these lands. They start to take hold of the gods and to intermingle with the people. The judges have to come in now and not only defeat the enemy, but also the people around, push them away. So, verse 18. Then he said to Zebah and Zilmah, Where are the 2 men whom you killed at Tabor? And he answered, Are you so where, as for you, so were they. Every one of them resembled the son of a king. And he said, They were my brothers and sons of my mother, and the Lord lives. And if you had saved them, I will not kill you. So he said to Zareth, the firstborn, Rise and kill them. But the young man did not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a young man. Then Zebah and Zilmah said, Rise yourself and fall upon us, as for the man is, so he is strengthened. And Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zilmah, and he took the crescent ornaments that were on the necks of their camels. Verse 22. Then the men of Israel said to Gideon, Rule over us, you and your sons and your grandsons also, for you have saved us from the hands of Midian. What is Israel now doing? They're going to make their own king. That's what they're wanting to do. Remember in the New Testament the story of Paul? They tried to make him a god. Look what Gideon said in verse 23. And Gideon said to them, I will not rule over you, and my son will not rule over you. What? The Lord will rule over you. And this is Israel's failure. They want to have somebody do the work. They want to have someone take responsibility. Anybody other than who? Them. And this is a sad story, but the Israelites simply want to live under somebody's control. Now, spring forward, when the time of the judges and we get into the kings, what's Israel going to say? We want a king because every other nation around us has a king. And what is God going to tell the prophet? Okay, here's the deal, guys. If you want a king now, before you decide, before you raise your hand and vote, he's going to take your sons and your daughters, and he's going to make them servants. He's going to take your land. He's going to take your money. He's going to take your future, your present, and anything else that you have, and it's going to be his. So how many of you still want a king? And guess what they all did? It's like a bad Baptist business meeting. We want somebody to do for us what we're not willing to do for ourselves. We want somebody to be accountable to God, but we don't want it to be us. And when you look at the history of Israel, what are you going to see? You're going to see them wanting somebody else to be responsible, but not them. When you look in this country, okay, not to make a political statement, but when you look at the evolution of this country, what have we basically said? We want somebody else to make all the decisions and be responsible for us. That's the problem. That's a sad place to wind up. And that's not a Democrat or Republican or a Libertarian or anything else. The statement is, man quickly gravitates to that place of comfort where somebody else is in charge. And you know what? Somebody will be in charge, but it probably won't be the person doing the things that you want. Amen? And so this is where they are. And so Gideon's got all kind of problems. He's got people around him. He's got Israel that now wants to make him a ruler over them. And Gideon said to them, verse 24, let me make a request of you. Every one of you give me the earrings from the spoil, for they had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites. Now guess where all this kind of comes back from? How many of y'all remember Abraham's children? Father Abraham, had many sons. Many sons had, well, Father Abraham. But what was his first son? Who? Ishmael. Now let's get this right. Let's get this right. David, are you ready to get it right? God came to Abraham and Sarah and said, I'm going to bless you with a son. And because they were old in their own eyes, like Gideon was weak in his own eyes, they said, after a while, they started talking amongst themselves. I can see them sitting, Anna, at the kitchen table with a pot of coffee, going, you know what? I think what God meant was, and Abraham said, you know what? Sarah, you might be right. Now, in my house, the coffee pot was always full, and the ashtray was never empty growing up. And Mom's snuff can never... You didn't hear that, did you? Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Have y'all had those times where it's late at night and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do, and all of a sudden it's that time? And at my house, it was always that time you sat around the kitchen table. I can still see the ashtray back when Dad smoked and all his friends smoked. It was that time when you travel somewhere and there wasn't any halfway. Nobody loved us when we were growing up, so we didn't have seat belts. You could lay up on the back windshield. Y'all remember those days? And Dad, that old Ford Galaxy, all the way to Mississippi, he'd be smoking. And if you asked him to crack the window, he'd be mad. They stunted my growth. I should have been bigger. So what did Abraham and Sarah decide to do when they got all panicky in the middle of the night? They got all reactive in the middle of the night. Let's just take the handmaiden Hagar. That's probably what God meant anyway. Now, that's not what he said, but I'm sure that's what he meant. And so the firstborn was not Isaac, it was Ishmael. Was God pleased with that? No. And so what wound up happening to Ishmael was he got pushed out. And who was supposed to get the inheritance mostly? The firstborn. Was Isaac the firstborn? No. Was Isaac the child of promise? Yes. And so that war started way back there in Genesis. And it continues to this day. Because Ishmael, who is the tribal line that comes from Ishmael? All the Muslims. come from that line. And so when you look at the problems in the Middle East and you go, why can't they just all get along? I can tell you why they don't all get along, because two people sat at a kitchen table with a coffee pot and a pack of cigarettes and said, I think I know better than God. You see, this is the problem with Israel. If we always, just like them, know better than God. And it doesn't matter how you try to slice it and dice it. They're going to have to deal with Ishmael and his descendants from now on. What's the problem in Gaza? What's the problem in the Middle East? The Outer Banks? Ishmael. And who is basically surrounding Isaac? Ishmael. Now, that's just a reality. It's a blood feud with two brothers. And it pops up here. Verse 25, and they answered, we will willingly give them. And they spread a cloak, and every man threw in the earrings from his spoil. And the weight of the golden earrings requested about 1,700 shekels of gold, besides the crescent ornaments. The crescent ornaments, same thing you see. And the pendants and the purple garments worn by the kings, the Midians, besides the collars that were around the neck of the camels. And Gideon made an ephod of it and put it in his city in Orpha. And all Israel did what? Ooh, boy, Israel is just on a path. They whored after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. Now all of a sudden you're starting to pull in all this stuff from everybody else again. And it's just making a mess. So verse 28, so Midian was subdued before the people of Israel, and they raised their heads no more, and the land had rest for 40 years in the days of Gideon. But there's rest for the people from war, but is there rest from the problems that they've created all the way through this story? There's no peace in Israel. Why? Because they did not do what God said. They continued to do what they thought was best. Gideon for 40 years. Now, the death of Gideon is coming. Verse 29, Zerubbabel, the son of Joash, went and lived in his own house. Now, Gideon had 70 sons, his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubines who were in Shechem also bore him a son, and he called his name Abimelech. Okay, we'll stop there for tonight. We'll pick up the story from there. So the story of Gideon so far, the reluctant warrior, has subdued the enemies of God. But has anything really changed in the hearts of the Israelites? No. They're just as unfaithful as they have always been. For the church today, what we have to ask ourselves, if you want to make an application for this, is just really, how faithful are we? And how much confidence do we have in ourselves? How much confidence do we have in God that He will keep His word? That's a big question for us in any day, an era of time. Any prayer requests we have tonight before we close our time? Remember Savannah as they continue to, I'm sure, have sleepless nights with little babies. And we have several young ladies that are soon to have children. So pray for them. Also, yes, ma'am? Okay, we got another one. I didn't know that. There's going to be a lot of nursery workers needed in this church, and I'm not one of them. So, anyway. Any others? Janie, would you pray for us, please?